Ford just ran their best qualifier at Michigan in P14. That is not a bad day. That is a crisis inside a manufacturer program with no answers left. Dodge has not turned a single Cup lap yet, and the gap is already this wide. Cowlick Racing lost Chevrolet factory data, lost the RCR Technical Alliance, and is still beating fully supported teams on race day. Something is fueling that. Wind tunnel runs on the Dodge Charger body are done. The engine problem that everyone said would push this to 2028 just got solved. Quietly, secretly, without a single press release. Tim Kuniskis told the press, "I'm not giving up yet," when the garage called a 2027 Daytona entry impossible, and then kept building. Dodge is coming back, and Brad Keselowski going on social media to kill the RFK switching rumors only made it worse. The comment section immediately started asking whether Penske dumps Ford next. That one post did more damage than the original rumor. NASCAR is not opening new charter spots. 36 stays 36. Every team Dodge picks up is a team Ford or Chevy loses. And that math is how you destroy a manufacturer alliance from the inside out. Subscribe right now, because the defection list is the part nobody is publishing yet. Now let us talk about who in the garage is already having those conversations. Cowlick Racing is the team worth watching right now. Not because AJ Allmendinger is putting up championship numbers, he is not. Not because Ty Dillon has suddenly cracked the top 10 on a consistent basis. He has not done that either. Cowlick is worth watching because of what they are doing without. No Chevrolet factory data, no engineering pipeline from Hendrick Motorsports or Richard Childress Racing, no manufacturer money flowing into the hauler. Their Chevrolet alliance is functionally over because the moment Cowlick signed with Stellantis to run Ram trucks in the Craftsman Series, Chevrolet closed the door on the technical side. The big Chevy teams, Hendrick, Spire, RCR, share aero data, simulation runs, and setup packages that smaller manufacturers rely on to stay competitive. Cowlick gets none of that now, and they are still beating fully backed operations on race day. That is not luck. That is a team that already knows where its future is parked and is running out the clock on a manufacturer relationship that is already dead in everything but name. The Truck Series move was never about trucks. That is the part that got missed all season. When Stellantis announced Rom would return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for 2026, the garage treated it like a feel-good story about brand nostalgia. Mopar fans got excited. A few analysts wrote about the Ilmor spec engine package and moved on. Nobody asked the harder question. Thus, why does a company serious about a Cup Series return start in trucks? Because you need a team. You need a structure. You need a pit crew culture, a driver development pipeline, and a manufacturer-team relationship that has been tested under race conditions before you roll a Cup car into Daytona inspection. Cowlick now runs 5 Ram trucks with Stellantis backing, 3 full-time drivers, 1 rotating entry, an entire operation that has been learning how Stellantis works, how Stellantis communicates, and how Stellantis spends money, all while the Cup garage focused on silly season driver shuffles and charter disputes. The foundation did not get laid this summer. It has been curing since January. Now go back to that Brad Keselowski post, because that moment is where this story changed temperature. The rumor circulating through the NASCAR internet was simple and irresistible. Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing was flipping to Dodge. It had everything fans needed to run with it. Keselowski's history with Dodge, the 2012 championship, the Penske connection, the Roush performance graphic that dropped showing a Dodge partnership. The problem was that Roush Performance and Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing are 2 completely separate companies. They share Jack Roush's name. That is where the overlap ends. The Performance Parts division cutting a deal with Stellantis had nothing to do with the Cup team's manufacturer contract, but the NASCAR internet does not stop to read the fine print. Keselowski had to go on social media and say it directly. RFK has a multi-year agreement with Ford, a commitment from Ford leadership, and none of the speculation is based on anything real. That post was supposed to close the conversation. It opened 3 new ones. Within the hour, the comment sections had moved entirely off RFK and onto Team Penske. Fans were writing that Penske goes back to Dodge in 2028, that Keselowski's own future after RFK leads him back to Mopar, that Roger Penske, who built the last great Dodge Cup program and delivered a championship with it, still has the relationships and the ambition to do it again. Keselowski's denial became the starting gun for the the next wave of speculation. One post. That is all it took. The charter math is where the real danger sits for Ford and Chevrolet, and it needs to be explained plainly before anyone talks about team defection. NASCAR's charter system works like a licensed franchise. There are 36 charters in the Cup Series. Every team holding one gets a guaranteed starting spot in all 36 Cup Points races, including the Daytona 500, and a guaranteed cut of NASCAR's revenue distribution. Charters are worth serious money. They are assets teams buy, sell, and lease. NASCAR has confirmed the charter count is not going up to 40 to accommodate Dodge. That decision was deliberate. It forces Dodge to compete through existing chartered teams rather than arriving with a fresh expansion entry. In practical terms, Dodge needs to sign teams that already hold charters. Cowlig has 2. That is Dodge's confirmed foothold, but 2 cars is the smallest manufacturer presence on the grid by a distance. Chevrolet runs with Hendrick Motorsports, RCR, Spire, and their allied teams. Ford has Team Penske, RFK Racing, Front Row Motorsports, and Wood Brothers. 2 Cowlig Dodge Chargers against that depth is not a manufacturer war. It is a manufacturer audition. The only way Dodge builds real competitive presence is by pulling additional chartered teams away from the establishment. And right now, the establishment has a weak link. Ford is last in the manufacturer standings. Not close to last. Last. Toyota leads with 637 points. Chevrolet sits second with 583. Ford has 469, 1 win all season. Ryan Blaney at Phoenix kept them off a complete shutout. At Michigan, the top Ford qualifier came out in P14. 8 Toyotas went ahead of them. 5 Chevrolets went ahead of them. Fans watching qualifying wrote that Ford was a massive step behind and that the body had hit its ceiling. Those are not casual complaints from people having a bad weekend. That is a fan base watching a manufacturer program come apart in real time and running out of explanations for it. The Ford teams lower down the pecking order. The ones not getting the full factory engineering treatment that Team Penske receives are running equipment that cannot close the gap to Toyota and Chevrolet on raw pace. When Dodge shows up with factory money, a fresh engineering program, and a manufacturer deal that makes a mid-tier team the flagship operation rather than the afterthought, that pitch is going to land differently than it would have 3 years ago. Here's what Dodge actually solved to get this far this fast. The wind tunnel work on the Charger body is complete at the initial testing stage. NASCAR's next-gen car runs a common platform underneath, the same chassis components, the same wheel and brake specs, the same core architecture across all manufacturers. What each manufacturer owns is the body shape. The Charger body has to sit within NASCAR's aerodynamic parity rules, pass simulation testing, and get approved before it turns a competitive lap. That work is moving. The bigger obstacle was always the engine. The Cup Series does not use the Ilmer spec package that the Truck Series runs. Every Cup manufacturer brings their own engine program, their own block, their own power output, their own reliability engineering. Building a Cup engine from the ground up takes time, money, and expertise that Stellantis had not fully assembled when 2028 was the working target. The breakthrough that moved this timeline is inside the engine program. Nobody outside Stellantis has published the specific detail, but multiple sources confirmed to The Athletic's Jordan Bianchi that the obstacle people thought would hold Dodge to 2028 has been resolved. That one development collapsed the entire projected timeline by a full calendar year. Tim Kuniskis runs the Ram brand for Stellantis, and he has been the loudest public voice behind this return. When NASCAR insiders were calling a 2027 Cup entry absolutely impossible, given the development window, Kuniskis told reporters, "I'm not giving up yet," and did not soften it. That line did not get the attention it deserved when it was first said. A CEO of a major automotive brand in a direct press conversation refusing to accept the timeline that the garage had handed him, and then backing it up by actually accelerating the program. That is not a PR quote. That is a person who understood exactly how much pressure the statement put on his own engineering team and said it anyway. The Dodge return is personal for Kuniskis in the way that these manufacturer campaigns always become personal when there is unfinished business attached. Dodge left NASCAR in 2012, not because they wanted to leave. They left because Penske moved to Ford, and there was no top-tier team left to carry the program. Stellantis watched Chevrolet and Ford spend the next 14 years dividing the sport between themselves. That is a long time to sit on the outside of something your brand helped build. The 2012 exit still stings for the Mopar side of the NASCAR fan base in a way that does not fully translate to people who were not there. Brad Keselowski won the Cup championship that year in a Dodge Charger under the Team Penske banner. It was the first Cup title won in a Dodge since Richard Petty in 1975. The timing made it worse. Dodge won the championship in the same season they announced they were leaving. Penske moved to Ford the following year. Without a flagship team, without a top-level engineering partner, Dodge had no competitive path forward. They did not lose their way out of NASCAR. They got abandoned at the altar by the team that had just won them a title. That history is why the Penske speculation that erupted in Keselowski's comment section hit differently. Fans who remember 2012 know exactly what a Penske-Dodge partnership produces. They also know Penske has the charters, the infrastructure, and the competitive ambition to make Dodge an instant championship contender rather than a two-car underdog operation finding its feet. What a fourth manufacturer actually does to NASCAR is bigger than the Dodge story alone. The last time a new manufacturer entered the Cup Series was Toyota in 2007. That move reshaped team alliances, redirected sponsorship money, and created the Joe Gibbs Racing and 23XI pipeline that Toyota now dominates through. A Dodge return triggers the same kind of structural shift. Teams that have been sitting at the bottom of the Ford or Chevrolet support hierarchy, getting minimal engineering data, minimal manufacturer investment, minimal support when things go wrong on race weekends, suddenly have an alternative. Dodge comes in needing partners. Those partners become the flagship teams of a manufacturer program rather than the third or fourth car in someone else's alliance. The economics of that flip are significant. Sponsorship follows manufacturer investment. Driver development pipelines get built around new programs. The entire competitive balance across the garage shifts because the alliance structure that Chevrolet and Ford built over 14 years was built for 3 manufacturers, not 4. Ford is the most exposed. 1 win, last in points. A body that the garage says has hit its development ceiling. Mid-tier teams running without the full factory engineering package that the top Penske and RFK operations receive. Dodge does not need to beat Hendrick Motorsports in year 1 to change everything. They just need to give 1 or 2 Ford teams a better offer than Ford is currently making. The charter math does the rest. Every team that moves is a charter Ford loses and a charter Dodge gains. 2 becomes 4. 4 becomes a real manufacturer presence. The garage has seen this movie before. It just has not seen it in 14 years. Subscribe right now and drop your prediction in the comments because the team that makes that first call to Stellantis is out there right now. And when that news breaks, this channel will be the first place that put all the pieces together before it happened.